Hello and welcome to Mr. Clark After Dark, everyone. My name is Lucas Clark and I am a certified educator with Alberta Education and the Alberta Teachers Association. All conversations and interactions exchanged is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. In no way does the content discussed intend to be in violation of the ATA Code of Conduct or meant to target any individual student, teacher, or to belittle or demean the profession in any way. If you have something that you would like me to discuss or have a story of your own to share, please reach out at lucasrdclark97@gmail.com. You can also send a direct message to me on Instagram at Mr. Clark After Dark. Hope you enjoy the show, and please do not forget to subscribe. And now, on to the show. Hope you all enjoy. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the episode with Tyler Cole. Tyler Cole is currently working in economic development in Nova Scotia, Canada. He has also worked in marketing and tourism in the Fort McMurray area within the past decade. On part 2 of the conversation, Tyler and I discussed the difficulties of recruiting and maintaining volunteers in the Fort McMurray area, the details of pitching an event, the National Aboriginal Hockey Championship, the issues recruiting events in rural areas, working with Golf Canada, building professional relationships, not making too many big promises and hampering your reputation, matching your reputation with responsibility, putting people in the right place, having a teacher as a fiance, and much more. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show.
I think it's still what it's called. That's what it used to be called. I don't know. Maybe they rebranded it, but it was basically any job on there in the sports industry world. We learn about this because it's the Sport Information Research Council of Canada. And so they have, there's not just the job board. They have, reports about all kinds of things and they do internal research and that sort of stuff, concussions in sports and whatever. But they also have this job board. And so everything from the women's hockey head coach at Red Deer College to athletic trainer at Acadia University or sport tourism jobs in Fort McMurray. It's all on there.
So did it literally say like sport tourism? Like
when I was hired, I was the sport tourism coordinator with what was then Fort McMurray Tourism. So what had happened was over the course of the wildfire in 2016, Sport Tourism Canada was brought in to, because I guess we'll back up from there. Apparently, it was before I moved here in 2017, but in 2015, it was a sort of year of sport in the region. So they hosted Western Canada Summer Games. They had I think the Oil Barons had a major tournament.
Well, that was the year that I was telling you last night. They had like Colton Parayko when he played. That was the year they were hosting like the Western Canada.
Right. Was that 14, 15, something around that time?
Yes. Yeah.
Western Canada Cup or something like it was called. There was Ringette Canada National Championships. There was a couple other like big events that happened here in Fort McMurray over the course of 1 year. And it was great for lots of things. But it was also like, this is crazy. Like we have to centralize how we're doing things to manage, because the issue we always have when we do events here is volunteers.
Yes.
This community is extremely generous. But people, when they work, they work. They're at site. They're busy. They work nights, whatever it might be. Like it's really hard. It's always been really hard to get volunteers for stuff here.
You don't have a traditional schedule, even though like the traditional schedule isn't really like what it used to be. Like we were just talking about. Here specifically, like you're gonna have shift work in every town, totally. But this is a lot more geared towards that. Yeah,
and the demographics of our community are changing as well at the moment. But you don't have a bunch of retired folks. Like my mom is recently retired, and she just got a volunteer gig at the Toronto Zoo.
Yeah, I guess want to get out of the house. Sometime.
You just don't have people who are 70 and looking for something to do. Yeah, it's changing, but it's never been like that, right? Our average age is 33 or something. Like it's because of that, right? Because it's a lot of young folks here, a lot of young families, that kind of thing. So it's always been a struggle. So when you have so many events over the course of a year, it puts a massive tax on your volunteer base. And it was sort of determined that a lot of the core stakeholders at the municipality, at the Regional Rec Corporation, at some of the key major sports organizations, minor hockey, baseball, et cetera, and the tourism office was like, hey, we need to streamline better how we do sport event attraction here and figure out if we're all on the same page for how we bid for things. We can then schedule things accordingly and say, this year, we're all in on the Arctic Winter Games. That's our big focus. Okay. We're going to do that this year. We're going to direct our volunteers, sponsorship dollars, that kind of thing. Yeah. So in 2016, Sport Tourism Canada was brought in to do a sport strategic plan with all of these regional stakeholders. to say, how can we do sport tourism more effectively in the region?
So were you at that meeting?
No.
Okay. That was held at Mac Island.
Probably, yeah.
And I remember I was the facility host in 2016. I remember actually like helping set that up. Okay, interesting.
So that strategy, one of the outcomes of that strategy was we need to hire somebody to be the lead of sport tourism in the region, to be the office that everything flows through, all the information. Again, it's not about one person can't do all of this. Things are always happening in the background.
Yeah, you're like kind of creating a branch.
Be the liaison between the local sports associations and the venues and the municipality. Be at all those events at the national level.
Has someone that tries to do everything.
Yeah, because you work very closely with those people, obviously, but you need to be closely tied in with at the national level, at the Sport Tourism Canadas of the world, to say, I'm sending this person to this conference on behalf of the region to do some shopping around for what events we should possibly host. Mm-hmm. And because they live locally, they have the knowledge and expertise to say, if you did a table tennis event, I don't think, yes, could we do it? Maybe. Would it be popular enough? Would you sell any tickets? I don't know. But hey, in this community, we love baseball. Baseball's great here. Yeah. Really works. We love curling here. Let's
especially just curling. Moving here, because you might have an idea of like what you're seeing. But
so this role was created within what was then Fort McMurray Tourism to oversee that portfolio of sport event attraction in the region. And for some reason, they hired me. I was 23 years old. Had I graduated yet? Possibly not. Like I was right on the verge. So I moved here in July of 2017.
Yeah. Do you remember like what they asked you for like an interview?
In my interview, they wanted me to pitch an event.
Okay.
They said, did they give me the event to pitch or did I pick it? I don't remember. Yeah. But they wanted me to pitch something. They said, put together a presentation and tell us why we should host this event here. So I pitched the National Aboriginal Hockey Championship.
Yeah.
Which is something that it's going to Grand Prairie for the first time in Alberta's history next year. I think you still keep tabs chased on that. It, I chased that for years. It was the event we wanted. It would be the coolest event ever hosted in this community. It's absolutely amazing. I went to it in 2018 in number 2 in Sydney and Cape Breton. And they, because they were hosting it, and because it's this sort of, there's provincial teams for each province of Indigenous hockey players, boys and girls. And like it's U18. So the Team Alberta has tryouts, and they invite Indigenous kids from all over the province to create a Team Alberta, and then they go to this event.
That'd be awesome.
It's run by the Aboriginal Sports Circle.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
The Aboriginal Sports
Circle? Aboriginal Sports Circle is kind of an Indigenous overseeing sports federation, Canada. So they are the rights holders to this event. They're heavily involved in the Canadian side of the North American Indigenous Games. So they help put together the athletes and things for that event. What else are they involved in? A couple other things. Sport programming for Indigenous youth, basically.
Okay.
And so this is one of their properties, is they have, because as I was saying before, all these organizations have events that are under
the rights.
They're the rights holder of the event. So they decide where they want to host it. They decide who's going to do it. They decide how it's going to work. And so that's one of their events. And so, that's what it was. And I did my interview, and I'd never even been here. I didn't know anybody who'd ever been here before. Like no one of my family's ever been here. Yeah. So I got some family in Alberta, but never here.
Yes.
And so I came in, and they're like, so I did a bunch of things and said some stuff. And then they called me up and said, "We like you. Yeah. We don't think you know that much, but we think you can learn. So,
but you know what?
We'll give you a shot."
That is, I think, literally the net point of what I try to instill in the students of show that you know and are willing to learn.
Yeah.
Because if nothing else, like you had an idea and you were excited about it.
Yeah.
Maybe they're like, hey, he's missing the mark here, here, and here, but he's got the core.
Yeah.
He's got what we can see, what we can develop, right? Show that you have like the ability to demonstrate potential, right? That's kind of the, not to get too motivational.
No, but that's what it is though, right?
Yeah, like that 100%, is the
because
goal, right?
It was the nature of the role was it was something that was going to need to grow.
Yes.
Because we'd never done this before. No one had ever had this job in Fort McMurray before.
Yeah.
Lots of people had this kind of portfolio on their desk, whether they worked at Mac Island with the Regional Rec Corporation, or they worked, lots of folks in the municipality who I worked with extensively would do this work. But it was never their sort of core mandate was you are in charge of this file. Yeah. Go and figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of how it went down, is it was very much about trying to learn on the job. And they said, we think you can figure it out.
And so you get into sport tourism.
Yes.
What was the biggest challenge for trying to attract events here?
Early on, the hardest thing was our community wasn't really on the map for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyone who ever been here, they'd seen we have great facilities. You know, we got things like Mac Island, even in the rural communities, things like now what they got in Conklin, Anzac Rec Center, these kind of things are fantastic. And there's money here. Yeah. The landscape has changed, but back then you'd see, you know, for years, Syncrude put their name on a PGA Tour Canada golf tournament, where there was money out there in the sponsorship space to put on big events.
Yes.
You know, big industry companies would sponsor things and you'd have, you know, there's dollars from the municipality to do things, but it was just, you weren't on the map with stuff. And you'd say, hey, like,
I guess even the narrative at that time, because I've even noticed in the last 8 years or so, basketball, volleyball, and I'd say mainly those two have grown exponentially in Fort McMurray. And I'd say like hockey's been pretty stagnant because our best hockey players always go to Fort Sask or Edmonton or of some sort, or they go play junior somewhere. So the best talent is never retained here. Whereas now I think that's no longer as much the norm.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, you have to say like, you know, whether, and it's funny, we would have more success with national level events than with provincial events. Because it's a heck of a long way from Medicine Hat to Fort McMurray, right?
Yeah. Whereas if you're national, you're traveling far.
You know, if you're going to nationals, you got to get on a plane no matter where you're going.
Yeah.
It's all, you know, the teams are in the organizations, you know, for baseball, like if you're Team New Brunswick, if you're the team from Miramichi and you've won provincials and you're going to nationals, you're getting on a plane. If it's Montreal, you might drive, but like for the most part, you know you're flying somewhere, so you've built that into the budget. So you're like, if we're already getting on a plane, we got to fly somewhere. If it's Fort McMurray, okay.
You're splitting hairs
it's
pretty
fine.
much. Yep.
It's okay. But if it was provincials, we were told by a couple of provincial associations, we're like, don't call me. We're never going there.
Wow.
They're like, it's too far. We do QE2 corridor. Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer, maybe like a bit off the highway, but like that's what we do because it's easier for everybody. And I was like, do I think that's fair? No, because our kids pay the same fees. Our kids are sanctioned by you as well.
All the time
but
because I've even said
our kids are always going down the highway.
And like, I said the cross country because that's what the field I've been most intimately involved in. And my biggest, I would say, advertisement of Fort Mac is if you like outdoor activities, the Birchwood Trails are second to none. Like the cross country events that we've been at, they've all been great. They've all had great hosts, but the quality of the track has even just like our normally maintained trails that are within 5 minutes of everyone's house pretty much is insane to me. And so like even but so then we're always the ones traveling so far for everything. And sometimes it's like, oh yeah, you got to go to Lethbridge, and it's like we're never flying, so we have 11 hours. You got an 11-hour bus drive just to run the next day, right? So
it's tough. And so again, I disagreed with what was being told by some of these provincial associations, but like it is what it is. That was their policy. So you'd shift your approach. You'd say, okay, you know what? Maybe it's Western Canada events you're looking at. Maybe it's national events you're looking at. Maybe it's Northern Alberta. Like,
so what major events did you end up hosting that you were like, this was like, I really wanted this and we got it?
Probably the biggest one. Well, Arctic Winter Games is a different issue. We can talk about that in a second. That's a the way the strategy was set up is we were responsible within our office for single sport events. And then anything multi-sport, like Arctic Winter Games or Alberta Winter Games, that kind of thing, would come with a much more joint effort because of the dollars and the resources required to do it. So on the single sport side, in 2021, we hosted the Canadian Men's Mid-Amateur Golf Championship at Fort McMurray Golf Club.
Okay.
Our team was heavily involved in that with the folks at Fort McMurray Golf Club and with Golf Canada. And we're really proud of that event. It was great. Like, it went really well.
Well, because we actually always host zones here now. For golf.
And so we worked really hard to build the relationship with Golf Canada to say, have you seen the golf courses we have here? Like, do you understand how awesome our golf courses are? And that was in August of 2021. And I think it was the highest winning score in the history of that tournament. Those greenskeepers, they beat those guys up. They grew the rough out like crazy. They put the pins in all kinds of hard, like people were 15 over, and they were loving it. The greenskeepers were absolutely thrilled. They're like, "You're gonna come here. We're gonna make it hard for you." And that's what it was. You know, it was a great tournament.
Well, and honestly, not that I've had this long experience golfing, but it's been a couple of years now, and I've been to like places around like BC and like the Calgary area for some golf. And I mean, Woodbuff and Mac Island,
we got some great golf courses.
Great courses. I mean, not rotary. I'm not trying to.
Hey, man,
not trying to crap on rotary golf here.
But no, it's true. And I think that, there's a reason why for 5 years, maybe more, I hosted a PGA Tour Canada event. It was Mackenzie Tour, various different names over the years, but the PGA Tour Canada hosted an event at Thickwood Golf Course because
I did not know this.
Yeah, it's called the Boreal Open.
Okay. I don't even remember hearing that.
Yeah. And so it was the PGA Tour Canada, so not Tiger Woods wasn't coming, but you had great players would come, and it was a great tournament. Syncrew was sponsored it for many years, and it was a great event because it showcased the great golf we had.
Did Mike Weir come here?
I don't think so.
No,
I could be wrong.
I feel like I remember that.
But it was it was a sort of proof of concept that it was a great golf course that could host, and so that was an event we were really, really proud of because it went really well, and it kind of put us on the map for golf here, and we've seen some other stuff happening with both the two with Miskinaw and with Fort McMurray Golf Club with kind of junior golf and things like that since then. What else was on the list that we were really proud of? Again, I had a limited involvement in the baseball events that have happened in MacCallum, but those are great events.
Like you have a department, like it's not just you, like you're kind of going back and forth. So how much work did you kind of do with the Indigenous communities surrounding Fort McMurray?
Yeah, lots. It's something that speaking on the bigger picture tourism side, not just on the sports side, but our team was involved lots on the tours and development side. It's something that was identified very early on in our tours and development space.
Because even in conversations I've had with you, like this lodge that we just talked about starting off, it's just things that even though they exist, I still, for some reason, I'm like reluctant to associate them with being Fort McMurray. Yeah. So why is that, right? Like I have this kind of channeled idea of what Fort McMurray is and like that it's limited and that we don't have any kind of cool stuff like bigger cities do. But so like, what are the things that you
so on the Indigenous side, I think what really happened was lots changed over the course of the pandemic, but people wanted to see kind of authentic experiences as one of the current major driving factors.
With people, right?
People and nature. Yeah. There's a reason why so many folks over the course of the pandemic moved out of condos in downtown Toronto and moved out into the country or moved to PEI or whatever, because they said, I don't want to be, it's important to me to be connected with open space and with nature. And we've got nothing but open space. If you take the regional municipality plus Wood Buffalo National Park, it's about 100,000 square kilometers. And most of it's just
less
trees,
than one person per
swamp,
square kilometer.
Trees, rivers, so there's space out there for folks to live and to exist. And the Indigenous communities are the experts in that space. They are the experts at what that land is about, what it means to them, and what it means to their communities. And so this is one of the reasons why a couple of years ago, when Travel Alberta and Indigenous Tourism Alberta were looking at development zones for future tours and development, they put this region near the top of the list for Indigenous tourism opportunities.
Who did that?
So Travel Alberta is the provincial tourism authority in Alberta, Crown Corporation, and then Indigenous Tourism Alberta is a fairly new, maybe 10 years, maybe less, organization which focuses on Indigenous tourism development. So they work very closely with Travel Alberta. They work very closely with the provincial government for funding reasons to build Indigenous tourism experiences in Alberta.
Is there like I know not every single group is going to be the same, but is there almost like kind of a reluctance? Because of like seeing the Indigenous communities as like tourism potential? Is there ever like that kind of political dynamic that you had to deal with? Or is it usually generally people are mostly welcome to that kind of development?
Yeah, it's not for me to speak for what Indigenous communities want, but I would say that it's always been, this is a tricky thing all over the world when it comes to these kind of traditional experiences, is how can you make sure that the people who are delivering the experience, that it's coming from a place where that's what they
like authenticity.
Yeah. And it's not just, hey,
we're here to make money off
because you see this in other parts of the world. I'm sure it happens in Canada too, but you see it in other parts of the world where you go to a place and you can pay money and some folks will do a traditional activity and you can kind of watch so that you can tell your friends that you saw it.
The spiritual tourism, like the ayahuasca stuff, I hear a lot about in the podcast realm. But,
like that kind of stuff. Again, if that's what folks want to do, good for them. It brings people to their community. That's good for them. But it's always this thing about, and this is where groups like Indigenous Tourism Alberta come in, because they can sort of assist with the ability of saying, because it's all about the consultation. It's all about the relationships and the conversations that you have with folks to say, because I can come in and say, hey, we'd love to see something built in Fort Chip. We'd love to build a lodge in Fort Chipewyan that has great opportunities. But if the community doesn't want it, then it's not happening. Like, you need to have buy-in from the community to want to see these things.
Yeah, because those are the local population that will sustain it, right?
Exactly. And you can help and say, look, we talk to these associations and these organizations that have knowledge and information, and we think that there's an opportunity here, and here's what we're hearing, and here's how we can help, and here's how we can do these things. We, as in people who work in the tourism world. But if the community says, I don't want that, then you can't do it. It's a non-starter. You can't do it. So it's very much about that consultation, and it's very much about that conversation that you have to have with folks to make sure that they feel included in the process. So
this has been, and I don't mean to like gas you up too much here, but I would say the number one thing I've noticed about you is excellent at building relationships and maintaining connections. Obviously, I know that's a big part of your job, but like, I'm not asking if you have like a formula here or anything, but when you're meeting kind of like let's say you're going to start a process of consultation, you meet that person for the first time. What is kind of like you never come across as like awkward. Like you're always just like, you just want to make something happen. Yeah. You want to make something positive happen. Like how have you gotten better at building and maintaining relationships, especially professionally?
Yeah. I think it's about intentionality and authenticity.
Yeah.
Like, you have to go in and be, because everyone's busy. Everyone's got things going on in their life. If you go in and just kind of have a chat and whatever, see, we're here because we want to start this relationship. Like, you got to be upfront about what your intentions are and say, hey, look, I'm here to talk about whatever it might be.
Like, never beating around the bush. Like, it's
because I think people, they don't want to be like fluffed up with various things. Like, people want to be like, just be honest about what's going on here. Like, and be deliberate with your approach and say, when you book that meeting, say, hey, we're coming here because we want to get to know you. We want to build that relationship to have future conversations about whatever it might be. And that's sort of the intentionality part of it. But the authenticity part is like, don't be something that you're not.
Yeah.
Like, be like, hey, I'm here on behalf of this organization to have this conversation. That's what I'm here to do. This is what I'm all about. This is my story. This is what brings me to this place and brings me to this conversation, and share that intentionally with people. And also, it's about, like anything in any relationship, it's about the following up and about the sticking to what you said. If you said that you were going to, circle back in 3 months, if you said you were going to, send over some further information, if you said you were going to connect them on to somebody else, you got to do it.
Yeah. And so did you ever have like a routine of like, okay, like I met with this person, you kind of like have like do you keep like a list of people that you came in contact with? Like, oh, I need to follow up with them? Or are you pretty automatic with like, oh, I haven't seen that person in a while? Like, do you have a set? This is my teacher brain coming in. Like, if I was in that position, I'm like, okay, I had this meeting that date. I'll keep like a reminder in my phone, but that's kind of, I almost find that's like less authentic. Yeah. If you're keeping lists of like, oh, I need to follow up. But I find you're very much like, that's just who you are. Yeah. Which I find like blends well.
It is part of it. Like, you have to be organized in that way of like, because you meet so many people and you go to so many events and you're involved in so many things that you need to be on top of it to make sure that you are, doing the thing that you said. So I'm very detailed with notes and Outlook, all the Outlook tools about keeping track of tasks and different things. And Hillary and I talk about this all the time. Like, I love systems and I love organization and I love optimization of different things to try and use different tools at your disposal to keep on top of things. So I would do a lot of that, and then just be, I don't know, you'd see people a lot all the time, right? You'd see people at events, you'd see them out in the community. It's one of these reasons why these kind of jobs, like, it's all about community, because you're out in the public all the time. Like, you're a public face of what you do. Like, I had my first boss who hired me at Fort McMurray Tourism, Frank Creasy, who was our organization director for many years here in town. When I first started out, he gave me advice that I'll never forget in my professional life. He said, if you are good at this job, people will know who you are. So you have to conduct yourself accordingly. Then there's lifestyle discussions that too, but from a professional lens, in the scope of this conversation, that's if you meet a whole bunch of people and you're making all kinds of big promises and you're sort of swashbuckling around with things, and then you don't do anything, people say, oh yeah, that's that Tyler guy that promises everything and then never follows up. Oh yeah, that's that organization, because you represent your organization in those conversations too. Yeah. So if you go in those conversations and you're so saying, oh yeah, tourism promised me they're going to give me $1 million, and then they never did. Yeah. That's not that's bad. You can't do that.
So how did you kind of adjust yourself to kind of being that public face? Was that kind of like weird, or do you kind of was it kind of a bit more natural? So you, not like you were like famous or whatever, but it's like you become kind of more of a commonly sought after individual for events. So like, was it hard to kind of bear that responsibility, or was it pretty natural?
Yeah, it was different because you're trying to sort of, because people realize that if you do a good job, that they know you can help. So they want to get in touch with you because they know that you might have something that they could help. You might know someone they could talk to.
Yeah.
And so part of that, I think, was on my side, was trying to take initiative with things. If you'd meet someone and you say, "Oh, I like Lucas. Have you ever met Peter Perino? Like, you should talk to that guy. Like you and he have the same problem."
You're putting people together a lot.
Yeah. One of the things we talked lots about, because one of the other sides of all the sports system here in the community, was the Wood Buffalo Sport Connection, which was founded as a legacy regional sport development organization as part of the legacy funds of the Western Canada Summer Games in 2015. And it was about this exact thing of like, hockey and ringette have the same problem. There's not enough ice. So how can we get them in the same room to have those conversations, to then advocate on behalf of the people who use arenas in town, to say, you got to build the Northside Rec Center. We need more ice. Here's why. Or, baseball and softball, or other groups that are kind of in the same boat of shared issues. Everyone's got the same issues around coaching and volunteering and certain things, but this kind of sports-specific issues, how do you kind of facilitate those conversations between different organizations to say, how do you go out and, advocate on behalf of sport users?
Well, you're also kind of delegating.
Yeah,
too, right?
Because I can't do that. Because my role, we were council funded. So 2 years after I joined Fort McMurray Tourism, Fort McMurray Tourism merged with economic development. So economic development was a department of the municipality, and then it was merged in with tourism to form its own sort of arm's length organization called Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo Economic Development and Tourism, which was municipally funded, but operated independently. So we would go and get our own grants. It's set up in a way because municipalities often can't get certain grants and access certain programs, but arm's length organizations can. So that way you could go and get funding and do different things that a municipal department couldn't do. Right.
Okay,
So because of that, you can't, I can't go to council on behalf of McTavish and say, you should give McTavish money. Right. Because you can't double dip in that way. So you could advocate and you could make a connection. Hey, you should talk to these folks in this CIP, Community Investment Program office, the municipality. They'd love to hear from you. Yeah. Tell them I sent you. But I can't
well, that's also too, it's like, tell them I sent you is almost, it's a trusted referral.
Because I know those folks. You work closely with these people. So you say, hey, go and share. I talk to them regularly so they know. Because it was one of these things where it became later on the tourism side, where because our office was a trusted partner of Travel Alberta and others, Travel Alberta would talk to us and say, hey, we got this application from someone who's looking for funding for an event. Do you know about them? Can you vouch for them being, do you guys see potential in this event? You become this kind of trusted community partner of these things.
Yeah. And I find the building trust thing is something that you can't try to do. It's you slowly try to be the one who does your best to make good decisions, and if you make a mistake, it's you're being legit, you're being authentic, right? I think that's.
But you can blow it quickly though. You could spend 5 years building trust with an organization, and then you either mess something up or whatever happened, and they're like, we don't trust them anymore. So
I just think about myself if I was in a position like that where you're kind of responsible for coordinating a lot of major events. So I even find with teaching, it's kind of hard to check out of the job. And I know we'll get to kind of your experience being engaged to someone who's in a pretty similar position to mine. But I feel like that'd be very stressful. If you have a lot of major events, I know you kind of have your typical work day, but is it 7 p.m.? Are these things circling through your mind all the time? Or do you have a pretty good way of kind of moving away from it? Or
so there's two ways to look at that. I think one side of it is that the nature of the work that I was doing when I was doing this on the sports side of it was that, if you work for the Minor Hockey Association and you're the president of the association, or let's say you're a team manager, let's say we were trying to bid for U14 AA provincials and you're the team manager for the U14 team, you probably have a real job. So, and then you do hockey dad stuff, team manager stuff that evening.
Yeah.
So you're probably texting me or calling me that night and saying, hey, I just got off work. Like, can you, let's talk about you. You sent me an email this afternoon about the bid package or about this question you had for whatever it is that you're working on. I would have contacted you about something that I'm working on your behalf. Yeah. And then you would have got in touch with me at 7:00 because you're then home from work. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you're having to go meet with people. Yeah, let's go grab a coffee. Let's go, on the weekend or in the evening because you're dealing with folks who have, like, my world was this all the time. Mm-hmm. You work at McTavish all day and then you're the team manager at night. So how do you balance? It was all part of it of like your hours would be a bit wacky sometimes because you're dealing with this stuff. Not to mention events are on the weekend, events are in the evening. So it's all part of it. Mm-hmm. But that said, I've always been intentional with my ability to try and turn it off. Like, I had a boss who said, we don't save lives here. Like, this isn't nothing that we do. Yeah. With some exceptions.
Yes.
Nothing that we do is that dire at 12:50 on a Sunday afternoon. Right? Like, it can probably wait until Monday. So don't feel like you need to be constantly tied to your work. Yes, if it's important, you got deadlines, like things or whatever. But if it's like a regular, you got an email from someone about something, like, it doesn't have to be that dire. Yeah. Because as we all see with teachers, like, you having to be always on is draining.
Yeah. A lot of the conversations I've had with people is how much of that expectation do we put on ourselves too? Because, like, I've even kind of gotten into where I don't really respond to emails on the weekend anymore. I'll still do work on the weekend where I'll do my marking, a little bit of planning, because I really do try to work on like Saturday and Sunday mornings for like while I'm fresh. Then I have the rest of my day to kind of do it. That way my evenings are freer throughout the week, right? That's kind of been my way of, I'm kind of I'm still kind of working every day.
Yeah.
But I'm being a bit more intentional of like scheduling time off rather than actually choosing when to work, because you can always work.
Yeah. And there's another thing about teaching, I think, right? One of the many hard things about it is that, we work in a community which is powered by overtime.
Yeah.
Right? We're all how do I get that OT shift? Yeah. How do I, I'll stay.
I'm making $200 an hour on this Christmas shift.
And teaching is a fundamentally not an overtime paid gig.
Yeah.
And which is tough because, there's so many expectations to.
I wouldn't even know what you would channel as overtime though. Like, I don't know what
maybe not.
Well, no, like, what's your, like, I guess we can kind of get into it now. Because obviously you're engaged to the person who pretty much shares a wall with me upstairs in the good old McTavish here. Boomer. No, I'm just kidding. That's just her golf name. So
she's going to hate us for something.
What is it like sharing a life with someone who's pretty much at it all the time?
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. And I'm sure the statute of limitations has passed on this. When we were kids, so I have a twin brother, and when we were kids, Dad mostly taught grade 4 when we were little, and when we were in like grade 8, he'd be like, "Can you guys help me mark some math tests?" It's like 2 division, it's like 2 digit like multiplication, right? Whatever. Yeah. Even I can do that.
Retired, it's all good.
And so, like, I can't mark, I can't help, and I know I can't.
Yes.
But like, you can't help that. Like, I can't help a Macbeth critical response project. Like, I can't even do that. Hillary's embarrassed by my English marks in high school. So like, you'd love to help.
I did an English minor. Yeah. And I still am like,
so the thing about it is that you see your partner put so much time in, and she's an amazing teacher because she puts so much time and effort in. She really cares. And she asks me for some things sometimes. Hey, can you like watch this thing and let me know if you think it'd be appropriate? Is there bad language? Like, do you think it'd be interesting? Like, whatever. Not that I know anything about what 17-year-olds think is interesting, but like, you know what I mean? So there's part of that where you can sort of help a little bit of like helping understand or helping kind of, hey, I'm thinking about like doing this. Like, what do you think about that? Have you read that book? That kind of thing. But for the most of it, you just can't do much. So I try and I'll cook dinner. I'll walk the dogs. Like, I'll try and be helpful in that way.
But it's just weird to me that, and again, I think teaching's always been this way.
Yeah.
And so again, part of the newer part where even Hillary's like still obviously fairly new as a teacher in like her career, like 7 years in, it's not like you've been at it for 20 years yet, but there's such a teacher shortage right now. And I've pretty much talked about it every episode, but it just kind of concerns me because like, what does it look like 15, 20 years from now? And if it's kind of getting exponentially more difficult or time consuming.
Yeah.
What does that look like 10 years from now when like the pipeline's dried up? Like, what is the tipping point? That's kind of been my
And I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. I'm not qualified to answer how you fix it. But I think, but it's a fair question though, right? Because this is what it is. Like, how do you draw people into a career which is known to be taxing? And yes, there's great aspects to being a teacher. Yeah. You know, whether it's the summers off, the great benefits, the great camaraderie you have with your colleagues, all that kind of stuff. Like, there's still huge value in that. Yes. But if you're wanting people to sign up for 40 kids and 120 essays to mark
multiple times a semester, and I guess that's tough. It's like, how do you? And I'm kind of just thinking out loud of like, what parts do you quantify to potentially measure as being either overtime or some sort of compensation, right? Because I think the conditions, or that's usually it's like, oh, we need to improve the conditions to make it more competitive in the market. But then that's kind of where it ends. Right. Like, I don't know what's beyond that.
But I'd say this too, like, I think this is a sort of, it's not just teachings like this, like any salary job is the same thing.
And that's what I mean.
But
so how is it?
In other salary jobs, you can kind of flex your time with things to say, hey, like, I went to an event all Sunday, so don't take Monday off. Right? You can kind of balance out your time on things because especially in, jobs like I've had where, you're going to events or you're traveling over your days off or you're doing things. You can kind of balance, you can flex and balance your time to sort of make sure you're not working crazy hours, which burns you out and makes you
and time in lieu has been the biggest one.
Yeah. Where it's, but like, teaching, I don't know how you do that.
Yeah. Cause like, even if you're a person who like teaches if you teach a subject with little to no marking, but then you coach 2 sports, but like if your time in lieu is only for those 2 sports, well, it's like, what about the person who works all day and then is doing all their marking in the evening? Yeah. Like, how do you...
Well, that's the other thing, right? It's not every class is equitable in this way because some classes the marking is much less intensive. It's not as involved. Like, you're not having to read through things and make notes and whatever. Sometimes it's right or it's wrong. Yep. It's Scantron. It's that kind of thing. And you can't, which is great. Like these are tools that have helped clearly 100%. In this way. Yep. I wonder though, this is not my area of expertise, but I wonder if there's ways.
It's valuable seeing it from the outside. What do you see?
I wonder, the reason I'm thinking about this is you mentioned, 10 years from now, how's it going to look? I wonder if, what we've seen with AI and things like that, I wonder if there will be AI models or other aspects that can help the English and socials teachers where they can train an AI model to say, here's what I'm looking for in these responses, grade them, and then I will review the feedback just like we do anyone does with AI.
Like you're still kind of using your own personal judgment for the
just
assessment.
Like Scantron, where you use the Scantron to kind of quickly run through things, but you're still reviewing it. You're still making sure that there's understanding in there because it's right or wrong, but maybe lots of people answered B, but it was C, but B was close to C. Like what am I taking from that can possibly use in my lesson to make sure they're not mixing up those 2 similar outcomes? Yep. I wonder if there's ways to limit the amount of paper that comes in a milk crate to be marked and written on over in red pen and then sent back. That's changing too. It's now Google Classroom and things like that.
Most of my stuff's on Google Classroom.
But that's how it used to be, where it was like you'd see a crate full of Hillary's mom's an English teacher. And that's what it was. It was boxes of marking would come home physically to be written on and then brought back and then handed out and then, okay, come see me after class if you have any questions. So I wonder if there's tools like that, smart tools that can help get through the initial backlog to then focus on the real specifics. Because, whatever it is, go through it and make sure the spelling is all sorted out. And then you can really focus on, are they really understanding the message here? Are they picking up on that symbolism in that passage? Are they picking, I don't know. Maybe there's something about that. We'll see.
Yeah, because I find that is, again, if you're going to look for a crux, I mean, so far I don't really have any distaste for the profession. I obviously know it's very new, but marking just seems, because when I was still in my younger days subbing, it was just, okay, well, if you kind of know what you're signing up for. Yeah. That was always kind of my approach. Sure. But now the more I'm doing it, I'm like, is there a way to make this more efficient? Like just to make it more like ways to make it better for myself and the student. Yeah. Like can you save time but try to find the same results?
And I wonder too, like, is there ways as the teacher in this too, can you assign different things? Like this probably doesn't even make sense. Yeah. All the teachers that are listening will laugh at this suggestion, but like, before you might have said, write me an essay.
Yep.
Now can you say write me a paragraph, but you still get the same outcomes?
Yeah.
Where it's less to mark, but it's still the same. I don't know if it works like that.
Our position papers, I do. My grade 12s always write 5 paragraphs. My grade 11s always write 4. That's one way. You're doing less reading, but you're still seeing the same kind of.
It doesn't solve the core issue if you have to read 120 assignments, but it's still. Yeah. I hear you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you, Lucas. I
it.
appreciate you, man. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Hey everyone, thank you all for tuning in. Really do appreciate it. Just wanted to say again, if there are any issues with professional conduct and or you would like to share your own story, experience, or have something you would like to contribute to the show, please do not hesitate to reach out at lucasrdclark97@gmail.com or send a direct message on Instagram to @MrClarkAfterDark. Hope you all enjoyed, potentially found something of use, and of course, please do not forget to subscribe. See you guys all next time. Unless you're scared.